All right, and good morning. The bell across the road for me, that is a school signals 11 o'clock, so I'm going to get going. Want to welcome you to our March 4th, 2019 community call for Coaching Business Builder and PlanDoTrack. It's been really exciting to see both of these books picking up momentum, even in the middle part of the year. I think as we move into new quarters, into new seasons, we're reminded of how important it is to plan. And so you might be interested, if you're a coach, pick up a copy of the Coaching Business Builder. If you are a virtual remote professional, you might be interested in PlanDoTrack. Both books are very similar in that they share skills and frameworks and tools to help you move your work forward. And a big part of our work today is in the area of project management. So I wanted to actually return back to my roots. I spent the first 15 years of my career as a project manager, really a program director. And I often refer to programs as being projects on steroids. As you'll see in our presentation today, programs, projects, really key in today's world. Want to take you into some tools and tips and ideas for corralling your programs. Chances are that you have many projects on the go. Some you're running with by yourself, others you're leading a team. So I want to share with you some of the best practices for project management. And what PlanDoTrack and Coaching Business Builder is all about is really to give you support in three main areas: planning, doing your work, and also tracking the results. So you can follow along on our two related websites, coachingbusinessbuilder.com for coaches or plandotrack.com. And I really want to invite you to also join our monthly newsletter. It's at bit.ly/PDT list. I'll be building on to some of these tips later on this month, in the month of March. Usually this newsletter goes out towards the end of the month. So if you missed the February one, which focused on collaboration, please do check it out. And you can link into that through the blog, as well as through the Facebook page called PlanDoTrack.com. So a couple of new things that are ongoing. I have launched the new on-demand program, the 19 Productivity Tips, and that is available over at our Teams 365 Teachable site. So if you're looking for learning, if you're looking for a bit of a booster shot, something that you can do on a regular basis, something that you can do maybe daily or weekly, this course is probably of interest to you, and that's totally on demand. I'm also hosting bi-weekly calls every other Friday throughout the months of February through July 2019. And those additional live calls are sort of like building out additional elements of the program. I hosted one on Friday, covered some more about how to navigate the course, as well as two apps actually that I find are really useful in navigating productivity. So hope you'll join me there. Very reasonable cost. It's over at teams365.teachable.com. All right, today is all about project management foundations. And I want you to think about, what role is project management playing in your world right now? Are you leading projects? Are they solo? Are they with a team? Are they in person? Are they virtual? Like, what does it look like? And how is it either helping you as a business, as a team, or how is it getting in the way? My guess is this is an area that a lot of you are just doing intuitively. So I want to bring to you some of the tools, because really projects are at the heart of many businesses and teams today. We often assume people know how to manage projects, but in fact, that's a bit of a fallacy. Certainly in my former world of work, while I had studied project management, it was in the years before project management credentials were really in play. And although I have never gone on to complete those credentials, really leveraging our body of knowledge in projects really makes a big difference. And really, credentials are a requirement in many industries today. So project management, you might see this if you've been working in the realm of projects for years. You might actually see a Gantt chart here. I'll cover what that is a little bit later in our presentation. But it's always about really helping people figure out who needs to know what and when. Projects are all about what needs to get done, when does it need to get done, how long is it going to take, as you see by these dashboards, and what is that progression? Sometimes when things get merged over top of each other, it's really, really tricky. So we do want to see in the realm of project management what's really important. It is about knowing the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, and how. Communicating that so that people know what they need to do, how they need to do it, what level they need to be reporting back on, and how they fit together. There are some core skills that are really essential for project management today. And many of those you'll find laid out actually in section 1 of Plan, Do, Track. So these are really skills that any virtual professional needs today. And these range, of course, from relationship building. As I write in Plan, Do, Track on page number 10, we do not operate in a vacuum in the virtual space. It is important to proactively build relationships with peers, our bosses, our matrix team members, and other internal and external team members. Note the creating connection and building community tips box below the chart. So I'll just offer that up. Relationship building is key, and actually in both books, in both Plan, Do, Track and Coaching Business Builder, I give you several exercises and activities to help you mine through what are the key relationships internally and externally to your world that are important right now. We work through people, we interface with people, and we also need to be clear on what needs to get done. And that's where another core skill for project management is understanding project requirements. So going back to our Gantt chart, which is really a graphical representation of what needs to happen on any project, we want to get really clear, what are these different lines? What do they mean? Is this a report that needs to be done or some research that needs to be done so a report can be written? You'll notice that there are other activities that are going on at the same time, and they may be actually overlapping. This activity could pass off to a report, but now notice these two elements come into play. So in project management, we want to use visual tools to help us identify what are the different components, but notice that there's a lot of overlap. And these might be tasks that are done by individual team members or a multitude of team members. And so really, project requirements, knowing what needs to happen, and estimating time are two key critical skills. When I do project management training for organizations, these are an area that we look at. What are the projects you have on the go? How do we get there? And how much time is it going to take? Some of this does involve a lot of negotiation, which of course leverages our ability to build relationships. So in negotiation, we want to really be focusing in on what can I do for you? How does that fit into your priorities? How does that match the priorities we have? And then as we get into action, we'll be able to monitor and evaluate as we go. So there really are some core skills that help us move forward as a project, as a team. And within that, we do want to be continuing to notice what's helping, what's hindering, what's getting in the way, and adjusting as we go. So I wanted to zoom into one of these skills, which of course is relationship building. If you missed the February 2019 series of calls, really I did one on relationships and collaboration. Relationship management, as I write here, is about the skill of influence. This includes our ability to be a great listener and know what is important to others. We also need to understand who our people are and what their preferences are. Part of relationship building and influence is about being sensitive to others, what's in it for me. And it is about being tactful and diplomatic, being able to diplomatically and sensitively communicate alternative points of view. In projects, as it relates to relationships, a lot of the time we're working in matrices, so we need to be able to really focus on influence rather than direct leadership. Without trust and rapport, it's very hard to influence others. And so this is why I've spent a lot of time, not only in the workbook planners on relationship building, but it's a key area that we explore in our work together. Without trust, the skill of influence is moot. It's really not usable. And finally, we want to make sure that we understand the political currents and nuances of groups, teams, organizations, and relationships. So as you can see, project management is key, as is relationship building. Now, another related skill set that I mentioned in that list a few slides ago is that we also want to understand what's required. We might have the right people, but do they understand what needs to get done and in what order? As you can see here, this is a process mapping tool. And like these boxes, you could be using a whiteboard, a blank wall, using Post-it notes to delineate each one of the tasks. So some of the questions you want to ask yourself with any project entity, again, I'll use this example of creating a report. What are the elements which make up this project? Well, maybe there's some research, maybe there's some graphic design, maybe there is some writing, maybe there's editing, maybe there's publishing. Those are 5 different elements. And within each one of those elements, like what goes into editing? What goes into research? How long am I going to give myself to do the research? Who do I need to talk to? What is the exact output? So process mapping is a key part, and it's often very easy to jump into a project and not get into mapping it out, not getting really crisp and specific of, okay, in creating a report, what are the major building blocks? That's your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it might be 1 to 8 or 1 to 3. Under that, what are the elements? What are the discrete packets that are going to make up that component? And then under that, what does that entail? Who needs to be involved? And how long will it take? So I'd invite you, if you're facing a new project that's quite large and unwieldy on the surface, start to chunk it down. Grab some Post-it notes, work out along your wall to really identify what's the bucket 1, what's the bucket 2, what's the bucket 3, even if we're just saying this is reporting. All right, so my invitation here right now is for you to think about what projects you are planning. And we won't have time to do this, but I would invite you to take that project and start to chunk it down into its core elements using the process mapping tool. I'm going to continue to share a number of tools with you that I think will be useful. There's certainly things that I've worked with every week in my former world of work. And really, it is about a discipline. Notice Wikipedia's definition. It's a discipline. Project management is about the discipline of organizing and managing resources in such a way so that those resources deliver all the work required to complete a project within scope, ability, time, and cost constraints. They also used to define it as a project is a temporary and one-time endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. And so in project management today, for coaches, for solopreneurs, for virtual teams, we can see a wide variety of elements. It might be reports. It might be getting the taxes or the accounting done. It may be doing a launch. So for example, next month, I'll be kicking off our 15th anniversary celebrations. And in doing that, I'm really excited, but it's a whole project in and of itself. I could actually use, and as I'm talking about this, I could actually use a bunch of these process mapping tools to make that happen. Now, one of the things you start to notice is you start to break things down. And again, I'll use this example of a report. Is a report a task or is it a project? So one thing we want to ask ourselves is that report or is the activity something you can do in one sitting? If it is something you can do in one sitting, it's a task. And multiple tasks roll up to create a project. If it's a report that can be done in one sitting, great, it's a task. Chances are, if it's a major report, it's probably a project. Also, you want to ask yourself, can you do the activity without anyone's help? Maybe you could if it's a small report, 1 page, but if you're looking at a 50-page report, maybe you need an editor, maybe you need to go out and do interviews with field staff, maybe you need to do some publishing, maybe you need to take some photographs. Perhaps you can do that all, but likely you're going to be working with multiple people. You also want to ask yourself, is it something you can do in less than 4 hours? As someone who spent many, many years in a former life doing publishing, creating newsletters, creating different entities, I know that it wasn't 4 hours. I can think of many, many Saturdays spent at the office in years before the internet to work out and pound out our company newsletters. Now, another key question to ask is whether this is a task or a project is, has the activity been on your to-do list for less than a month? And can you clearly define how you'll measure when the task is done? All of these questions come from a fantastic book, Lou Russell's 10 Steps to Successful Project Management from 2007. And although you might say, why is she referring to project management resources a decade old? Project management, like coaching, is an evergreen arena. It really is not changing. The skill sets are really not changing radically. They are being added onto, but the foundation is still the same. So that's our project versus task. Now, you might be the one that's at the helm, whether you're a solopreneur or a coach running your own business. Ultimately, you are taking on that role of the project manager. And PMs, affectionately known, project managers, are the ones that plan, organize, and control the project. So think about that. And in fact, that's why my work is called PlanDoTrack. So much of my former world of work was about planning, executing, and then getting things measured. That is PlanDoTrack. PMs plan, organize, and control. We're bringing together resources. We're helping like orchestrate really at that podium, sometimes in doing the work, but often it really is about working with others, inviting them to the table, and then helping them get the best results available in the frame and the time that you have available. So we're always working within a project management cycle. One thing that I haven't shown you though already is that projects operate within a certain framework. We say that projects happen within a certain time window, they happen within certain resources, and they happen within a certain scope. So if you can imagine that you are tasked with that reporting, you'll want to ask yourself, like, what does a report look like? Is it 50 pages? Is it 20 pages? What does it look like? And that's going to help us really get into like the initiation. We've been asked to do this task, but then we need to spend time defining it. And, you know, a lot of the adages that we say today, the 10 minutes of planning saves 2 hours of unfocused effort. Coming back to project management, that is truly the thing. We need to spend a bit of time mapping it out, specifying it out, and really looking at what is key within the framework. If we don't, then we can get very much off track. So we want to define it, and then we want to make sure that we're spending some time planning. Planning also involves resourcing. Who needs to do what, when, and how? And so it's not just about jumping into a project. It's about having a plan, making sure everyone's on the same map. As you'll see, if people aren't on the same map, things can get derailed very, very quickly. So once we've defined it and once we've actually got a plan in place, then we can execute and, as they like to say, control. In my former world of work, it wasn't about execution and control. It was actually about implementation and monitoring. And as I shared, I used to work in the realm of program management, which is really like project management on steroids. So some examples, just to bring this to life, I was tasked in my former world of work to manage multi-scale programs that would actually move across regions of the world, whether it was thinking of some of the work that I did, like redefining or rejigging post-secondary institution and education, or working to redraft secondary curricula for health and lifestyle education. Another project that I spent a program that I spent many years working on was rehabilitating and supporting post-natural disaster management rehabilitation efforts. So a country that I worked to support had been decimated by a volcano almost 10 years before I started on this program. So the work had been ongoing, but as you can appreciate, to rebuild from scratch when a capital city has been decimated, it takes not just weeks, not just months, but years. And so I was able to work with amazingly talented national and international staff, people like GIS specialists who were remapping land boundaries because, of course, all the records had gone under the lava. I had been working with civil engineers who were working on roads because in the new part of the terrain, roads did not exist. The part that got under lava was, in fact, the habitated part. So how do you rebuild from scratch when that is what is decided? It takes a lot of time to implement, monitor, execute, and control. And projects can run for days, they can run for weeks, they can run for years. That rehabilitation work is still ongoing. And so very much, part of your project management cycle is figuring out what is the time frame here? And are we all working to the same time frame? Projects are a team-based effort, most of the part. If you are your own solopreneur, chances are it's you or you're bringing special people on board for different projects. We do want to make sure that we are working with that. So as I said a few minutes ago, what's key in this work is communication. I've been using this photograph for years. I found it many, many moons ago, but as you can see, someone did not get the right memo or someone did not get the right email. You'll notice that, in fact, the light standards and the electrical lines are really perhaps not in the right place. Take a look, take a little closer look. Communication can mean the difference between success and failure. and we need to have communication all throughout a project. At the same time, we want to make sure that our communication is effective and what we are transmitting is in fact being understood and being implemented. So as I've written here, communication is a foundation of project management. As a project manager, you need to make sure that all parties are in the loop. And this could involve internal and external stakeholders. If you're in a bigger organization, your senior manager, or other project team members. And you really do want to communicate, and then communicate again. That's what we used to say. So a big tool for this is status reports. And I'm going to share a few tips on that as we go forward with some of these additional tools that I'll be shedding light on. Again, in our project management training under the Teams 365 umbrella, I go through a lot of these different tools. So think about that. Communication with ongoing, it should be ongoing with project team members. With other stakeholders, you may want to consider offering kickoff meetings, review meetings, or end of project meetings. We do want to have these official elements to sort of demark a project. And at a kickoff meeting, it's not just working on it, but it's also focusing in on your resources, your timelines, your outcomes. As I talked about a bit before, like projects are triangular. We can change the time, we can change the resources or the scope, but they're pretty much fixed. Unless we can, if you want something to go faster, you may need to put in more resources, more money, more people, or you may need to change the scope. Likewise, vice versa. If you're slowing it down, you're probably removing some of those resources and or removing some of the scope. So kickoff meeting, key to have everyone on the same page. You may have kickoff meetings for your immediate team as well as your stakeholders. Then we want to make sure that we're doing midterm meetings. These are also a little bit more of a formal meeting to check in, talk about what's working, what's not, what changes do we need to make, how are we on all the milestones or those key tasks that you've already identified out. And finally, we want to make sure that we are meeting at the end of a project to do a post-mortem or do a end of program debrief. What's worked, what's not, what are the best practices learned, and how do we carry that forward to other initiatives? We want to make sure that we have multiple parties at play, and this is where that orchestral approach can really become key to the project manager's role. We need to be building relationships and making sure that everyone is involved as appropriate. So I don't have it in the slides today, but one of the big tools that we're going to use in communication and relationships is the RACI. Who needs to be responsible, who is accountable, who is needs to support this work, who needs to be controlled, and who is going to implement. So RACI RACI has several different models. So if you're listening to that, you might also have responsible, who is accountable, who is committed, and who also needs to be informed. And C can also stands for consulted. So make sure your terminology focused. Notice I came back to this slide because it is all about communication. You want to make sure that you're communicating effectively. So beyond our program today, I just wanted to sort of shed the light on some of my favorite tools and techniques to support project management. Gantt charts, you'll recall those feet in an earlier slide where we had a bar chart there. We could use the PERT, which is really to schedule, organize, and coordinate tasks. We can also return back to good old brainstorming, right? This is where I think I really got imbued in a philosophy I train, I coach, I work around, which is keep it simple. The complexity is in the group. And we also want to make sure that we have status reports, action plans, and we might even be using a stoplight to keep it really visual. So Gantt charts, similar to that photo, I should have included it here, but similar to that photo, we want to make sure that we use a Gantt chart. Those usually have three parts. Of course, we have our timeline. That could be your days, your weeks, your months. We also have actions. What are those key action steps under each area? Who's going to do what, when, and how will we know? And the bars are also something that really can help us move. So I'm going to go back, if I might. If you can just imagine, well, here's another example. So, you know, here we really have your traditional, this is a much older view, but good idea. Here's your timeline. These are the different tasks. So we actually like bend this out. So We want to self-assess. Let's look at the project. Let's look at the vision. Let's look at the skills available. You'll notice that you have responsibilities here and when tasks need to embed or connect with others. So here in the self-assessment, yes, the accountant's involved, but their manager needs to link in with business advisors, managers, and other managers. That's going to need to happen before and during this next element happens, defining the opportunity. So very much Gantt charts give us this picture of who's involved, what's your time window. You'll notice these are days of the week, right? So this task here, it runs from, let's call it Thursday of one week to Wednesday. That's about 5 days. Pretty fast. And so we want to make sure that things are broken down. This is really a workflow design, and in former Gantt charts, which is now being replaced by other technologies, we really want to chunk it down. Who needs to do what? What are those key activities? Notice the duration. It's listed out here. It's going to be 10 days or 5 days to do the self-assessment. That's your project, your vision, your skills. But then defining the opportunity, doing some research of the market, doing some interviews, identifying the resources, identifying your cost elements. That's also going to be another 10 days. So projects should be broken down, and you're going to want to use it. This is a former Microsoft project. It's what I grew up on, really love it. You can get lost in it, but it really helps you to think through the different elements and the time frames involved. That's a project manager's role. And then the project manager needs to communicate that onwards with everyone else. So part of the toolbox of the project manager is to make sure that you're getting the information you need. And I think one of the most valuable tools is something we used to call the status reports. These should be submitted from each member of the team electronically and hard copy at least once a week. And this helps you keep on top. So what did you do last week? What are you planning to do next week? And let's look at some of the old issues or new issues that especially need support. Project managers have a lot of data they're taking in all the time. You really want to be looking at what you had planned to do last week versus what people actually got done and how that's getting carried forward or not into the next week. Really, you want to help your team start to flag issues early on. If people do not feel safe in raising concerns, in identifying things that aren't working, projects derail very, very quickly. So status reports are really important, and imagine interfacing. If you have this as your Gantt chart, you're then going to get the updates on, well, what did we do during this week of March or February? We can then also start to lay on, okay, with each one of these tasks, are we green on schedule? Are we yellow, maybe at jeopardy for having this happen? Maybe there are some risks that have popped up, some things that need to get done. Yellow, not a bad thing. In fact, it really helps you know that things need to happen. And really, we also want to notice the reds. Reds are things that have gotten stopped, derailed. Things are not possible. And so in the world of the project manager, he or she really wants to laser in not only to the green and what's going well, but what is the red? What is stopped? What is in jeopardy, beyond jeopardy? What is in crisis mode and needs to get dealt with right away? So I'll invite you to think about how you can layer in, of course, your projects with stoplights. And that will really lead into some action planning, ongoing action planning at the project level, but at the individual level. And this is what really led to my love affair, and it's a strong word, but my love affair with the one-page plan, which if you have a copy of the book, you'll see it second to last page. One page, it's just a bit of a different view there, landscape versus vertical. But this action plan can be completed by each and every team member, even every week. If you're working on projects that are scaling over weeks, have them do one of these a week. It helps keep people on target. You've got your task, your description, what needs to get done, maybe some details on what it fits or what it impacts in the project. Identify the resources, who you need, the timelines, the meetings. There's a lot of movement that we do in a one-page plan. And this could be something done on a Monday morning, individually, at the team level. Think about the practices that are going to help you as a team. So lots of skills go into being an effective project manager. I do a lot of work around this with different teams, creating shared vision, looking at your communication. being in integrity and holding the line, right? A lot of projects can gather scope creep. And so integrity is about returning us back to being fair and true to the principles and the initial elements of the project. Doesn't mean that things don't change, but we want to make sure that they're changing for the right things. Project managers need to be self-directed, need to be able to delegate and influence and really communicate. Back to communication skills. Project managers need great team building management skills and need to be able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive in a constantly changing environment. That means we're leveraging our problem solving skills as well as our time management skills. So these are the areas I cultivated as a team leader, as a project manager and program director. These are the skills that I've been working with virtual and remote and in-person project managers for many years. The exciting thing is, as we move remote, everyone needs these skills now. So if you're interested in having a conversation around how we can equip your team, please don't hesitate to reach out and touch me. There are lots of pitfalls that can fall up along the way. 5 that I really continue to be very aware of in my work: unrealistic timeframes, and we learn. We need to really notice what we know about tracking. 2, not enough people, lack of human resources, or lack of specialized human resources. You can have people, but are they the right people? And if you go back to any of my writing, you'll see how influenced I was by Jim Collins, who often said, do we have the right people on the right bus, in the right seat? And that's really a key issue in project management. You've got to be a great people person. We also can fall into this fallacy of planning in a fixed mentality, and really priorities change every day. In today's world, even more so than even 5 years ago. We can also run into problems because of lack of financial resources or lack of stakeholder support. So all of these can show up, and they're things that we want to keep in mind as we move forward with projects. There are a few more. I'm not going to have time to go into those today, but I really hope that you've enjoyed this. So as a result of today's session, what are the steps you're going to take? And 6 months from now, what do you want to make sure that you have done? I'm going to just speak for another few minutes and just saying that this is one of our monthly community calls for PlanDoTrack Coaching Business Builder. A little bit of a different focus, but I think a lot of this is grounded in project management. So while the books are not about project management per se, they are the tool to help you be doing some of this work, like the tracking, for example, like the planning. So if you are supporting a virtual or remote team, or you're a coach, these are great additions to help you start working through many of the top tips and ideas we've been working through today. There are, of course, a lot more extended project programs and elements for you to be working on, and I'll invite you to think about that. I'll be continuing to do a lot more around project management. Think about your priorities, pick up a copy of our books, and maybe join me this spring for the virtual retreats. I'm going to move ahead and just say that it's the month of March. Really look forward to stepping into spring with you. I'll be away for the week of March the 11th, enjoying some time out of country. So you will not probably see me, at least with my business hat on the social sites, but do connect. Effective Group Coaching, PlanDoTrack, Coaching Business Builder. Thanks for your time today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next month, where our call will also be the first Monday of the month. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.